It's disappointing. It's disappointing because we've worked so hard. We've worked so hard to get an education, to learn, to survive, and to be, participating members of our community.
That's Celia Labono Gonzalez, who is still coming to terms with the Supreme Court's ruling in June blocking President Biden's plan to provide relief to more than 40 million borrowers. In Celia's case, that meant the possibility of getting $20,000 of her loans canceled, almost all of her outstanding debt. Welcome to Sparking Equity. I'm Lande Ajose. In this episode, we'll take a look at what can be done to address ballooning college debt now and in the future. It's a burden most acutely felt by low-income students and by many students of color. Celia was a student at San Francisco State University until 2018. She is now a co-owner of the worker-owned Other Avenues grocery store in San Francisco, which emphasizes organic produce from small vendors. Her work there is tied directly to what she studied in college.
I ultimately ended up studying communication studies and geography with the emphasis in food and agricultural systems.
As with many students, the loans Celia took out did not cover her tuition and living expenses. So, to raise money, she sold produce at far-flung farmers markets throughout the San Francisco Bay Area.
It was really rough because basically any day that I wasn't at school, I was at work, and it was a long commute, pack up a bunch of trucks with stuff and then go to a farmer's market or somewhere in the Bay Area and then come home, and basically I'd be gone, from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., which made it rough to sleep and study and be ready for my morning classes the next day.
Now that the pandemic-era pause on loan payments expired in October, Celia says that the burden of having to pay off her loans could affect her ability to make major life decisions.
I'm 30 years old, and it just feels like a little stunted. Basically, now I'm facing that moment again where payments are likely to come due, and I'm going to need to figure out what that looks like for me. I'm definitely not prepared to have children right now, or I don't know. That just seems irresponsible to me, and let alone buying a house. That's a dream that probably wouldn't ever happen.
Students at many campuses around the nation are organizing to pressure state and local governments to do more. One of them is Desmond Rosier, a junior at Howard University in Washington, D.C. He is active in the NAACP's Cancel Student Debt campaign that's intended to address the Black student loan crisis in particular. The average Black borrower owes nearly $53,000 in student loans after graduation. They're also twice as likely to default on those loans as white students. In fact, Desmond, a first-generation college student, hesitated to accept his university's offer of admission because of the daunting costs.
So I knew it was too good to turn down, but I knew I would have to face the reality and face the fear of accumulating debt.
Supplementing the federal Pell Grants he received, his parents have taken out $30,000 in federal loans to help cover his first 2 years of college. But making the finances work continues to be a struggle, and Desmond fears going even deeper in debt.
Last summer, I did work 3 jobs. So I was working an internship as well with a small business, setting up tents and party rentals, and then doing DoorDash and stuff on the side. But it's also setting in on me that I'm going to have to take out more loans.
He realizes that he is not alone.
At my university, I know that there is a time of the year where I see a lot of GoFundMes of which students are asking community and the alumni to please fund their education because individual families cannot take care of the financial dues from the university. There's millions and millions of other students and families who's taken on the same challenge of first-generation college student and paying off debts just to pursue a higher education.
But all is not lost in terms of relief from the federal government. President Biden is pushing forward on a modified version of his original loan relief program. This time, he's trying to do it through a different law, the Higher Education Act, rather than the HEROES Act, which was shot down by the Supreme Court. And just to clarify, the HEROES Act is shorthand for Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act. A bit of a mouthful, I know. We want to explore what strategies could help students limit how much they borrow in the first place and not wait on Congress to act. With that in mind, we're pleased to have Jhenai Chandler with us. She's the director of College Completion Policy at the Institute for College Access and Success, or TICAS, as those of us in the field know it. She's based in Florida, although the head office is here in Oakland, California, and she herself has struggled with paying for college. Welcome, Jhenai.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start just by having you tell us a little bit about your personal story, because I understand that college affordability and issues related to student debt figured prominently in your own life. You decided to go to Florida International University instead of a state college near where you were living in New Jersey. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey. My mom was a teen mom, and I'm the first in my family to attend college as well as to graduate college. And so my mom worked at hospitals and nursing homes. And so she was exposed to college educated professionals, and she really wanted me to go to college. Jersey City is a very rough place, and I didn't have a lot of examples of people who went to college and succeeded. And so a personal desire for me was to go away to college. And it was very expensive, and I did have to borrow to go to college. And so I did take out some student loans, both federal and private. So I remember going to the financial aid office and still having an outstanding balance after my federal loans and scholarships all kicked in. And I was just handed a piece of paper, and it was all private lenders. And I didn't borrow much, but that has morphed into a large sum of student loans that I'm still continuously paying now. And I'm grateful for the means to be able to pay it, but it impacts life decisions, right? Like I have a daughter that's going to college in 3 years. So that limits her options and opportunities because I can't afford her tuition and mine. Also, buying a home was also a challenging experience, right? I personally also experienced affordability issues as a student, parent, and undergraduate, having to decide whether to pay for childcare, pay for access codes for textbooks, paying for food and diapers was a real challenge that I faced in undergrad as well. And so I'm really following and tracking the affordability policy changes and completion updates for myself as well as future of my family to have an opportunity to be able to go to school.
You've raised a lot of issues that are both present issues in terms of just how much college costs, but also what the future implications are of that. What does it mean in terms of, as a student, having to make choices between learning and real life things like diapers or childcare? What does it mean in terms of the future, in terms of making choices around home ownership versus renting? So those are all really compelling. I know during the pandemic, there were a number of colleges that froze tuition. But I'm wondering if there are other signs that we're making progress as a nation on college affordability.
There are many strategies for increasing college persistence and completion, but one of the models that has emerged and that's backed by a robust body of evidence is what we call comprehensive approaches to student success, or CAS. CAS programs provide students essentially holistic supports to be successful in their college studies. And they all take a similar approach of connecting students with a case manager or a counselor who meets with them frequently to build a rapport with them and to connect them with a customized suite of support, their academics, whether they need tutoring, their financial constraints, whether it's financial aid challenges, or if they need help with scholarships and awards, as well as personal support, whether it's related to childcare, if they need mentoring and coaching to help students overcome any additional barriers that can prevent them from attaining their degree.
And let me just ask, because it seems like in many institutions, things like academic tutoring or financial aid support or even coaching and mentoring, those aren't new innovations. So the new innovation is the holistic support. Is that the piece that's different?
A lot of times, these initiatives are disjointed across campus, right? So you might have one department that's focused on academic advising. You have another department, the Career Center, that's focused on the career coaching aspect of it. Then you have financial aid that's doing the emergency aid and the scholarships. And so students often are not aware, and sometimes staff cannot be fully aware of all of the resources and programs that's available to help students. What I think these programs have done is done a really good job of helping institutions brand and package these services and create some coherence. Here are all of the resources and benefits that's available to you. There's a full coordinator and case manager to many of these programs where students know where to go, who to contact. There's constant communication with them. And also the scholarships and the incentives is also what, to me, is very unique. I've been on many campuses where we provide the coaching and the support. And then when the student has a bill, there's not much that I can do aside from sending them to financial aid, and often they might have to borrow to meet their needs, where these have scholarships and various grants associated with them as well.
What we do know about college going is that you can minimize your cost of going to college by minimizing the amount of time it takes to go through college, and by making sure that you're getting the supports you need so that you can be successful, so that you're not going for 6 years to a 2-year institution.
I don't think anyone decides to enroll and take out loans to pay for their class to not do well, but it happens, right? Like not being academically prepared or feeling overwhelmed and not knowing where to go puts a student at risk of completing a course and being successful, and then they're stuck with a loan that they have to pay back for a course or a semester if they did not do well. So it's so important that we have structures in place to make sure students are equipped with all types of supports, comprehensive supports, to make sure that any challenge that they might experience will not hinder them from being successful. But I definitely want to talk about one of my focuses here with college completion is making sure students who start a degree finishes their degree, because we have over 40 million students in our country with some college and no degree. And students who stop out of college are at a greater risk of defaulting on their student loans. And so we see a disproportionate default rate for students who stopped out, 23% likely to default compared to 11% of students who did complete. And then when we look at Black students and students who enroll in like for-profit institutions, the numbers are significantly different. And so it's so important that we make sure we protect students' financial futures as well by making sure that they successfully complete, because it will limit their economic mobility to be able to move and do different things in life.
No, I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
That was Jhenai Chandler, Director of College Completion Policy at the Institute for College Access and Success. To give us a better sense of how the comprehensive approach that Jhenai talked about works in practice, let's go to a conversation between our executive producer, Louis Friedberg, and Aneesh Sohoni. He's the CEO of Chicago-based 1 Million Degrees. The organization works with the community college system there to provide a range of supports to get students to the finish line more quickly.
Welcome, Aneesh.
Thank you, Louis. Great to be here.
1 Million Degrees has been cited as an example of implementing this comprehensive approach. So fill us in terms of what is comprehensive about what you are doing.
Our mission at 1 Million Degrees is to support community college students on their pathways to economic mobility. Community colleges enroll 50% of Black and Latino students who are pursuing a higher education degree. And so just the sheer number of students that go through the system is really powerful. Sadly, though, we also know that unfortunately, too many students who attend community colleges are not completing their degrees. We think we have found in our work a powerful model that's been studied by the University of Chicago's Inclusive Economy Lab that can address that challenge. So as you noted, we have a comprehensive model, and we believe that holistic supports are critical. So we offer four things. First, we offer personal support to our students to help them navigate their life.
What do you mean by personal support?
We have a program coordinator. So that's a staff member on our team who has a caseload of up to 65 students at a time. So students may have a challenge on any given day. So for example, on a personal level, they may get a flat tire on their car and no longer be able to commute to school. Our program coordinator will be there for them to help them navigate how do they kind of get that figured out so they can still attend class. We also provide academic support. So we support our students to pick a program area of study that aligns with their future hopes and dreams, and then we hold them accountable to making progress toward attaining the degree or long-term credential that allows them to go on that pathway. Third, we provide professional support, and this is perhaps a unique part of our model compared to a lot of comprehensive college success programs. We anchor in economic mobility as our end goal. So all of our students go through curriculum that supports them with understanding who they are and how their identity might play out at work. It also provides life skills like financial planning and financial literacy. And we also provide career readiness skills around ideas like teamwork, and communicating effectively so our students can thrive after college. And then our students are also paired with mentors, ideally from their industry of interest. We call them coaches, who work with them to share wisdom and knowledge. The last piece I'll note about our model is we do have a financial component. So all of our students are eligible for up to $1,000 a year on the condition that they make progress against our program expectations. And it really serves also as a reward for our students for really investing in themselves. And too often our students will drop out of school for far less than $1,000 because of unexpected emergencies. And so whereas a lot of initiatives or scholarship programs focus on tuition, we focus on also having unrestricted access to funds given what our students' needs are as well. So as you can see, we have a lot we offer. Not all of that is necessary for every student at all times, but knowing that it is available and customized to an individual student's need is what we think makes our comprehensive model work.
To what extent do you think that this approach, this wraparound approach, and the support services you provide has an impact on helping students avert taking on unnecessary debt?
Our belief is because we provide holistic supports that help students come out on the other side with a degree and a credential at much higher rates, we think the economic value here or the financial value here for students is that they come out with a degree that has value for them long term. So in Illinois, for example, if you have an associate's degree compared to students who only have a high school degree, you're likely across your lifetime to make more than $200,000 more. And so there's a real return on the investment paired with really low tuition that they pay. And as we know, coming out with debt and no degree is the worst combination. So we think holistic supports are critical to getting students to the end line to have that thing of value, the degree that produces the economic return for them that makes the financial investment in the first place worth it. But too often we see students without the holistic supports not complete their journey. And the University of Chicago, as I mentioned, has conducted a randomized controlled trial on our model that found that our students are 73% more likely to graduate with that degree than the control group that they studied.
This seems like your approach is a very labor-intensive one. I mean, each one of the students has a mentor or coach, and you rely on foundation money. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on how replicable this approach is to colleges and other parts of the country who may not have access and probably don't have access to the kind of resources that you rely on.
So a core element of the work we do is to ensure we've developed a financial model and a business model for this work that can be replicated and doesn't rely on philanthropy forever. So while we are grateful for the philanthropic support that we've gotten, that we'll continue to get, we do work with our partners to think about resources a little differently. So what I mean by that is because of the increased number of students who enroll thanks to our services and the additional credit hours they take because they stay in college and complete at higher rates, we are a generator of tuition revenue for our partners. So our program costs roughly $3,000 per year per student. And the economic return or the tuition return that colleges see is about equal to the programmatic costs of our model. So we think we can help you generate revenue and get good student outcomes. That all said, the reality also is we have to reflect on what's the true cost of supporting students. There is no way to do this at scale without investments at the state and federal level to ensure our students, the majority of whom are first-generation college going, nearly 90% of whom are Black and Latino, they need access to resources and supports to do this. We think we have a pretty good value proposition, and we think our price point is reasonable for the outcomes we get, and we think we drive tuition revenue to make it replicable as well.
Well, thank you so much. We've been talking with Aneesh Sohoni, Chief Executive Officer of 1 Million Degrees in Chicago. Really appreciate your spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me and for the opportunity. It's a critical issue and feel honored to represent the perspective of our students.
So are there any prospects for relief from the federal government? To get the national perspective, I talked with Cody Hunanian, Executive Director of the Student Debt Crisis Center. I asked him about his overall reaction to the Supreme Court ruling.
This ruling really pulled the rug out from families that have been struggling with the economic impact of the pandemic, struggling with inflation, struggling with the student debt crisis that's been happening for over a decade now. So a lot of people came to the table and said, you know what, this plan, it might be blocked by the Supreme Court, but we have this other authority, the Higher Education Act, that could actually let the president do much more.
Wouldn't using that as a mechanism require action from a Congress that's essentially in crisis?
You know, the divided Congress is a huge obstacle to achieving student debt relief through a piece of legislation. But that's why the Higher Education Act is so powerful, because Congress already wrote into statute that the president has this power. So it actually doesn't require another piece of legislation. They have already given the executive this authority. And so it's actually quite the reverse. If Congress wanted to take away this power from the president, they would need to adjust the Higher Education Act and redesign that law. And that's why we've been pursuing executive action. We feel Congress already did their part when they wrote this bill. They already played a role in giving the president this authority, and they're not needed in this final step. The president has already initiated the process of pursuing student debt cancellation through the Higher Education Act. And so there's going to be a kind of protracted process in which the federal government accepts comments. It'll bring experts and stakeholders together to discuss the topic, and then it will create a final rule. What this means, though, on the other side, is that it could take a year or so to get this process through. And we're talking about, the economic impacts of a pandemic that are still hurting borrowers right this second. So the pros are that it's got a clear mechanism. The negatives are that it could take longer.
So it sounds like those folks who were engaged in this fight prior to the Supreme Court decision should remain engaged, because there is actually a mechanism for civic engagement and involvement to influence the next steps.
You nailed it. In fact, it's actually maybe more important right now that folks take action, precisely because there is this formal public comment period in which we need people to speak out. And so sharing your voice right now through this public comment period is absolutely critical.
Great. Cody, I really want to thank you so much for your time today, for your wisdom, for your expertise, and for your leadership.
Thank you for the time. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this in more depth.
That was Cody Hunanian, Executive Director of the Student Debt Crisis Center. Before we go, let's check back in with Louis Friedberg, who's been tracking the latest developments on the student loan forgiveness front. Louis, tell us what you found, because I understand things aren't as bleak as they maybe seemed way back in June.
Well, Lande, obviously for most of the tens of millions of students and former students who were counting on getting debt relief, they're still stuck with their loans. As you and Cody discussed, the Biden administration is trying to get an ambitious alternative plan through, which at best is still a year or more away from happening. That's if it makes it through the rulemaking process. But in the meantime, President Biden has been plugging away at canceling the debt of students under a variety of existing programs. In fact, by October of this year, he said that 3.6 million loan borrowers have had loans worth $127 billion canceled during his administration. Let's listen to what President Biden said recently about his efforts.
This kind of relief is life-changing for individuals and their families, but it's good for our economy as a whole as well. Freeing millions of Americans from the crushing burden of student debt, it means they can go and get their lives in order. They can think about buying a house. They can start a business. They can be starting a family. This matters. It matters in their daily lives.
But what's super interesting is that where we are seeing the most progress is regarding borrowers who took out loans tied to how much they earn after they leave college. These are the so-called income-driven repayment plans. In particular, the administration has published final regulations for its SAVE program, which will cut the cost dramatically of how much students in these income-linked programs would have to pay. So, for example, instead of paying 10% of their discretionary income to pay off the loan, that amount would be cut in half, and they'd only have to pay 5%. And after 10 years of paying off the loan, their loans would be forgiven, instead of the 20 to 25 years they've had to pay until now. Some estimates place the cost of that program at $475 billion over the next 10 years. That's even more than the estimated $400 billion debt relief program rejected by the Supreme Court. And what's impressive about this, it's not a one-time relief program. It will benefit students for years to come.
That's really surprising, especially that it has not received much attention in the press. Can you speak to why you think that is?
Well, Lande, I've wondered about that myself. I suspect that one reason is that the cost is spread out over many years, and that a lot of the cost is incurred not in the form of federal payments that has to come directly out of the federal budget, but is in the form of what the government won't take in loan payments over the years. So the costs may not have been as clear or as obvious as the loan program that the Supreme Court shut down. But I do have to point out that quite a few Republicans, not surprisingly, have opposed this program, as they do most things that the Biden administration tries to put forward. And these programs are not out of the woods yet, and could also get bogged down in legal challenges. In fact, in August, a group called the New Civil Liberties Alliance filed suit against the $39 billion plan you mentioned, and lawyers for the group tell me they will challenge the much bigger SAVE program as well, probably sometime in the fall. But these legal challenges notwithstanding, at least there's still some forward movement, and there are still prospects for relief for a substantial number of students.
All of this is a reminder that it's important for students and former students to keep track of these developments and to explore all the options at their disposal, despite the setback in the Supreme Court. It's also a reminder that minimizing your debt in the first place by enrolling in programs that offer you substantial support and help you to get your degree in a timely fashion is fundamental. Equally important, institutions must put in place the kinds of structures and processes to support students to finance their education with the least possible debt. And that's it for this episode of Sparking Equity. Thanks to our guests, Jhenai Chandler, Aneesh Sohoni, Cody Hunanian, Desmond Rosier, and Celia Labona Gonzalez. And special thanks to our sponsor, the Hewlett Foundation. Our producer is Kobe McDonald, and our consulting producer is Stephen Smith. Our executive producer is Louis Friedberg. I'm Lande Ajose. Please subscribe to Sparking Equity in Education wherever you get your podcasts so you won't miss future episodes. Thanks for listening.